My name is Dorothy Mae Johnson, and 3 months ago, I sat in my bedroom watching security footage of my own daughter sliding my mother's wedding ring off my finger while I pretended to sleep, believing I had lost my mind to dementia. The timestamp on that video read 2:47 a.m., March 15th, 2024. I watched my firstborn, my Keisha, lean over my supposedly unconscious body, whisper, "You won't need this anymore, Mama," and gently work that ring past my knuckle. The same ring my daddy saved 6 months of his porter salary to buy back in 1952. The same hands that had braided her hair for school every morning, taught her to write her name, held her when her own husband walked out 5 years ago. Those hands she believed could no longer remember what they possessed. But let me back up, because you need to understand who I am and why a woman like me would orchestrate such an elaborate deception against her own blood. I'm 67 years old, been retired from Citizens Trust Bank here in Birmingham for just 2 years now. Spent 38 years working my way up from teller to branch manager. Raised 2 children alone after my husband James passed from a heart attack when they were just 11 and 8. I've got all my facilities, thank the Lord. My doctor says my mind is sharp as a fresh broke dollar bill, and my body's holding up just fine despite the arthritis that visits my knees when the rain comes. The house I live in sits on the old north side, one of those sturdy brick homes built in 1946 that's seen Birmingham transform from steel city to medical hub. 4 bedrooms, 2 baths, a basement that stays cool even in August heat, and a garden out back where I grow tomatoes that would make your grandmother jealous. This house, along with my savings and the collection of jewelry passed down through 4 generations of Johnson women, represents everything I work for, everything I scraped and saved to leave behind. It was a Thursday evening in early January when I first decided to test my family. I'd been washing dishes, humming an old Mahalia Jackson hymn, when I heard Keisha's voice drifting through the kitchen window from the back porch. She was on the phone with somebody. I later learned it was Marcus, my son who lives 40 minutes away in Hoover. "Mama's getting worse," she said, her voice carrying that fake concern she uses when she wants something. "Yesterday she called me Patricia twice. That was her sister's name, the one who died 10 years ago. And Marcus, I found her good jewelry just sitting out on the dresser. She won't even remember she had half that stuff if we just—" The plate I was washing slipped back into the soapy water. My hand started trembling, not from age or illness, but from pure rage, mixed with something worse. Disappointment. This was my daughter suggesting that my supposed mental decline was an opportunity, that my confusion was her payday. I turned off the water real slow, dried. My hands on the dish rag with the embroidered roses Keisha had given me for Mother's Day 3 years back, and made a decision that would reveal more than I ever wanted to know about the children I'd sacrificed everything to raise right. The plan came together in my mind like the puzzles I still do every Sunday after church. First, I needed evidence, real, undeniable evidence. That weekend, while Keisha was at her book club, or at least that's where she said she was going, I drove to Best Buy. The young man there couldn't have been older than 25, helped me pick out 4 tiny cameras. "These are for home security," he explained, showing me how they connected to my phone. "You can watch from anywhere, record everything." "Everything?" I asked, thinking about all the things we'd rather not see but need to know. The next morning I started my performance. It began small, the way real decline does. I called Keisha by her middle name, Marie, when she stopped by for Saturday breakfast. Just once, then corrected myself with a little laugh. "Lord, where did that come from?" I said, touching my temple like I was confused. I saw the way her eyes sharpened, how she exchanged a look with her 16-year-old daughter Brianna, who was busy scrolling through her phone at my kitchen table. That first week, I escalated gradually. I'd pretend to forget where I put my reading glasses while they were hanging around my neck. I'd start a sentence and trail off, looking puzzled. I asked Marcus the same question about his job twice during Sunday dinner, making sure to space it out just enough to seem troubling but not theatrical. "Mama, you just asked me that," he said, his voice carrying more irritation than concern. "Did I?" I touched my forehead, gave them that vacant look I'd practiced in the mirror. "Well, tell me again, baby. How's that promotion looking?" Behind my confusion act, I was taking notes. Mental notes about every reaction, every whispered conversation, every time they thought I wasn't paying attention. Keisha started coming by more often, but not to help. She'd arrive when she thought I was napping, moving through my house like she was doing inventory. It was exactly 2 weeks into my performance when I noticed the first theft. My pearl necklace, the one James had given me for our 10th anniversary, wasn't in my jewelry box. Now I need you to understand something about that necklace. It wasn't the most expensive piece I owned, probably worth about $3,000 today. But Keisha knew the story. She knew her daddy had saved for 6 months to buy it, had it specially ordered from a jeweler in Atlanta. She was there when he clasped it around my neck at our anniversary dinner, right there at the Highlands Bar and Grill when it first opened. That evening, I shuffled into the living room where Keisha and Marcus were huddled over some paperwork at my dining table. "Have either of you seen my pearl necklace? The one your daddy gave me?" They both looked up with expressions so perfectly innocent it would have fooled me if I hadn't already seen the truth of them. Keisha stood, came over, and put her arm around me with the kind of gentleness you'd use with a child. "You probably put it somewhere safe, Mama. You know how you've been misplacing things lately. We'll look for it later, okay?" Marcus didn't even look up from his papers. "Maybe check the bathroom drawer. Found your wallet in there last week, remember?" I hadn't put my wallet in any bathroom drawer. That was him, planning evidence of my supposed confusion. Building a case for something I was beginning to understand was bigger than just stealing jewelry. If you're watching this and you have elderly parents, pay attention to what I'm about to share. The signs aren't always obvious. Sometimes it's not strangers or scam artists you need to protect them from. Sometimes it's the very people who are supposed to love them most. And if you're finding value in this story, please hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. I need you to hear what happened next, because knowing these tactics might save someone you love from the same heartbreak. That night, after they left, I sat at my computer and watched the security footage. There was Keisha, clear as day, slipping into my bedroom while I was in the bathroom. 30 seconds. That's all it took for her to open my jewelry box, grab the pearls, and drop them into her purse. She even had the nerve to spray my perfume on her wrist before she left, like she was shopping in a department store instead of robbing her own mother. But the pearl necklace was just the beginning of what they thought they could take from a woman whose mind was supposedly slipping away. Week 2 of my performance, I stood in my kitchen staring at the calendar on the refrigerator, running my finger across the dates like I was trying to decode a foreign language. "Keisha, baby, when is my doctor's appointment again?" I called out, knowing full well it was marked right there in red ink for the following Tuesday at 10:30. She came around the corner wiping her hands on one of my good dish towels, the ones with the yellow sunflowers I only brought out for company. "Mama, I told you 3 times already. It's Tuesday. I wrote it down for you, see?" She pointed at the calendar with barely concealed exasperation, then pulled out her phone. "Matter of fact, let me call Marcus. He needs to know about this." That phone call changed everything. Within 2 hours, my son was pulling up in his black Lexus, the one he was so proud of, the one he'd bought to impress his colleagues at the engineering firm. He didn't even knock anymore, just used his key and walked in like he owned the place. Found me in the living room working on a crossword puzzle, though I deliberately filled in several answers wrong and left my reading glasses in the refrigerator where he'd be sure to find them. "Hey, Mama," he said, but his eyes were already scanning the room, taking inventory. Then he turned to Keisha, who'd been waiting for him in the kitchen. "So how bad is she, really?" Those 6 words, spoken like I wasn't sitting right there, like I was already gone, cut deeper than any knife could. This was my baby boy, the one I'd stayed up with through ear infections and algebra homework, the one I'd worked double shifts to put through Georgia Tech. They thought I was dozed off in my chair, but I was listening when they moved their conversation to the dining room. Earlier that week, I'd had the foresight to place the old baby monitor from Brianna's infant days in the china cabinet. The receiver stayed in my bedroom, hidden under spare quilts. Technology might have advanced, but sometimes the old ways work just fine. We need to start thinking about her finances. Keisha's voice crackled through the monitor that night as I lay in bed pretending to sleep. The house alone has to be worth at least $400,000 in this market. Then there's her pension, the savings accounts, Daddy's life insurance she never touched. Power of attorney, Marcus interrupted. That's what we need. I've been researching it. If we can get her to sign it, say it's for her own protection, we can manage everything. There was a long pause, then a smaller voice. Brianna, my grandbaby, who usually stayed glued to her phone. Shouldn't we wait? See if Grandma actually needs, Brianna, go upstairs. Keisha snapped. This is grown folks' business. I heard the chair scrape, footsteps on my hardwood floors, then the gentle closing of a door. That child had more sense than both her mama and uncle combined, but she was only 16. What power did she have against grown folks' greed? The next morning, I gave them more ammunition. I pulled out the old photo albums from the hallway closet, the ones with the plastic pages that stuck together from age and humidity. Sat there on the couch, flipping through them, while Keisha pretended to dust my already spotless living room. "Who's this handsome man?" I asked, pointing at a picture of James from our wedding day. Keisha froze mid-swipe. "Mama, that's Daddy." I squinted at it, tilted my head. "No, that can't be right. James had a mustache." "Not when you got married, he didn't." "Mama, you were there. That's your wedding photo." I could see the excitement building in her eyes, the way she clutched that dust rag like it was a winning lottery ticket. She couldn't wait to report this to Marcus. Their mother couldn't even recognize their father anymore. The checkbook test came 3 days later. I'd left it right on the coffee table, open to a blank check, pen beside it. Then I'd announced I needed to lie down for my afternoon nap, shuffled off to my bedroom, but really positioned myself where I could peek through the crack in the door. Marcus didn't even wait 5 minutes. He slipped into the living room quiet as a cat burglar, photographed the account number and routing number with his phone, then carefully placed everything back exactly as it was. Or so he thought. I'd placed a single strand of my gray hair across the checkbook. It was gone when I checked later. Lord, the physical toll of maintaining this act was something else. You ever tried to keep your face blank when every fiber of your being wants to scream? The vacant stares I had to perfect in the mirror, letting my jaw go just a little slack, unfocusing my eyes like I was looking through people instead of at them. The way I had to repeat questions with just the right amount of confusion, not too much to seem fake, not too little to seem normal. "Mama, you already asked me that," became Keisha's constant refrain. "Did I? Well, tell me again, honey." The strain of watching my children transform into vultures circling what they thought was dying prey, that was the worst part. These were the babies I'd nursed through chicken pox, taught to ride bikes in the church parking lot, celebrated with when they graduated. Now they were scheming over my supposed corpse while I was still breathing. It started affecting me outside the house, too. Sister Margaret at church pulled me aside after Wednesday night Bible study. "Dorothy, you feeling all right? You seemed a little distant during prayer circle." I had to play it off, touch my temple, give her a weary smile. "Just these headaches lately. Getting older isn't for the weak, is it?" But she kept watching me after that, and I knew I'd have to be more careful. The last thing I needed was the church ladies starting their own investigation. They meant well, but gossip traveled faster than salvation in our congregation. The antique brooch disappeared during week 3. It had belonged to my grandmother, Big Mama Johnson, who'd worn it on her wedding day in 1919. It was a delicate thing, silver with tiny sapphires arranged like forget-me-nots. Not worth a fortune monetarily, maybe $2,000, but priceless in what it represented. 5 generations of Johnson women who'd each worn it on their wedding day. I noticed it missing on a Thursday but didn't say anything. I knew exactly where it would turn up. That Sunday, Keisha walked into my house for dinner wearing a new blue dress and my grandmother's brooch pinned right at her collar. The audacity of it stopped me cold in the doorway. She was testing me, seeing if I'd recognize it, using my own family heirloom as a diagnostic tool for my supposed dementia. I shuffled over to her, reached out with a shaking hand, the tremor only partly performed, and touched the brooch gently. "That's a beautiful piece, baby. Where'd you get it?" She didn't even flinch, looked me dead in my eyes, the eyes that had watched her take her first steps and lied smooth as butter. "Oh, just something I picked up at an estate sale in Mountain Brook. You know how I love vintage jewelry." My grandmother's brooch that had traveled from rural Alabama through the Depression, through Jim Crow, through the Civil Rights Movement, through my mama's hands into mine, reduced to something picked up by the child I'd raised with my own hands. Standing there in my foyer, smelling the pot roast I'd spent all morning preparing for these ungrateful children, I thought about James, how he would have handled this. He'd been gone 23 years now, left me to raise these kids alone when Keisha was 13 and Marcus was 10. I'd done everything, worked overtime, skipped meals so they could eat, wore the same coat for 8 winters so they could have new ones, taught them about family, about loyalty, about honoring what came before you. And here was my daughter, wearing my heritage like costume jewelry, while planning to warehouse me like expired goods. That Sunday, as I complimented my daughter on my own grandmother's brooch, I decided it was time to accelerate my condition. Monday morning, I stood in my own kitchen staring at the coffee maker like it was some alien technology, letting my hand hover over the buttons while Keisha watched from the doorway. "Mama, what are you doing?" "Making coffee," I said, then pressed the button for the timer instead of brew. The machine beeped in protest. She rushed over, gently moving me aside like I was made of glass. "Here, let me do it. Why don't you go sit down?" But before I could even leave the kitchen, she was already on her phone, her voice low but urgent. "Marcus, you need to come by today. It's getting worse fast." The coffee maker gurgled to life, filling the kitchen with that familiar morning smell, but all I could focus on was my daughter's next words. She couldn't even remember how to work it, the same coffee maker she's had for 5 years. By Wednesday, the pamphlets started appearing. First one tucked between magazines on the coffee table, then another left oh so casually on the kitchen counter. Sunshine Manor, where love lives on. The cover showed a silver-haired white woman smiling in a garden that looked nothing like any nursing home I'd ever visited. Inside, the marketing language danced around what it really was, a warehouse for the inconvenient elderly. 24-hour supervision, structured daily activities, medication management, prison terms dressed up in healthcare language. That afternoon, Marcus came by to fix my garbage disposal, which wasn't broken until he got there. I watched from the living room window as he stood on my back porch talking on his phone, not knowing his voice carried clear through the April air. "The house alone is worth $400,000, maybe $450 if we fix it up a little, plus her savings, the pension, all that jewelry she's hoarding. We're talking serious money here." Brianna was sitting on the porch swing, and I saw her shift uncomfortably. "Uncle Marcus, maybe we should wait. See if Grandma actually needs—" "Wait for what?" He spun on her so fast she flinched. For her to give it all to some charity? Or worse, for her to hurt herself because we didn't act. "You want that on your conscience?" That boy, using safety and conscience as weapons to justify theft. His daddy would have worn him out with a belt for even thinking such thoughts. The systematic disappearance of my valuables accelerated after that coffee maker performance. My father's gold pocket watch, the one he'd carried as a Pullman porter for 30 years, vanished from my dresser. "Have you seen Daddy's watch?" I asked Marcus, making sure to seem confused rather than accusatory. "Must have misplaced it, Mama. You've been moving things around a lot lately." The china set from my wedding, Lenox with real gold trim that took me 3 years to pay off in installments, disappeared box by box from the dining room hutch. When I mentioned it, Keisha had a ready answer. "You probably donated it to the church bazaar and forgot. You're always so generous." My signed first edition books, Langston Hughes, James Baldwin, Maya Angelou, that I'd collected over 40 years of book fairs and estate sales, worth thousands to collectors but priceless to me, gone from the bookshelf. "Never saw those, Mama," Marcus said when I asked, though I had security footage of him loading them into his trunk at 2 in the morning. "Oh yes, the cameras. While they were at work that Thursday, I had my neighbor's teenage son, Anthony, install 3 more. Paid him cash, told him I was worried about break-ins. He set them up in the corners where they'd catch every angle of my living room, dining room, and hallway. The boy knew his business. They were nearly invisible unless you knew where to look." The footage from the following Monday made my blood run cold and hot at the same time. There was Keisha, sitting on my sofa with a woman in a navy blazer, papers spread across my coffee table, a realtor, in my own living room, discussing my house like I was already gone. "Once she's in a home, how fast can we list it?" Keisha asked, running her fingers along the arm of the sofa I'd saved 6 months to buy. "Depends on the power of attorney's situation," the realtor replied. "But typically we can move within 30 to 60 days. This neighborhood is hot right now. All these old houses are getting bought up, renovated, flipped for twice the price." My home, where I'd raised my babies, nursed my dying mother, mourned my husband, celebrated 40 Christmases, reduced to a flip opportunity. The cruel irony was how they performed care in public while robbing me blind in private. Keisha's Facebook page had become a shrine to her supposed devotion. "Caring for Mama is my purpose," she posted, along with a photo of us from Easter Sunday. "God gives us these challenges to show our love." 247 likes, 53 comments about what a wonderful daughter she was. Meanwhile, she'd stolen $12,000 worth of jewelry in the past month alone. Marcus stood up at Wednesday night service to give testimony about honoring thy father and mother. "It's not always easy," he told the congregation, his voice cracking with fake emotion. "Watching someone you love decline. But the Bible tells us to honor our parents, and that's what we do. That's what love looks like." Amens echoed through the sanctuary while I sat there knowing he'd been in my house at 3 a.m. the night before, going through my filing cabinet with a flashlight. The storage unit discovery happened by accident. Keisha had left her purse on my kitchen table while she was in the bathroom. I was supposedly napping, but I'd crept out to investigate. There it was, tucked behind her wallet, a receipt from U Store It on Highway 280. Unit 447, paid for 3 months in advance. That Friday, I had Anthony drive me there. Told him I was checking on my own unit, slipped the desk clerk $50 to let me check on my daughter's unit. She asked me to grab something for her. The lie came easy when balanced against their betrayal. What I found in that 10 by 12 concrete box broke something in me. My mother's silver tea service, my wedding dress preserved in its acid-free box, photo albums spanning 5 generations, the rocking chair James had built for Keisha's nursery, even my good winter coat, the cashmere one I'd splurged on for my 60th birthday. $30,000 worth of my life, stacked like garbage waiting to be sold. Let me tell you something about elder financial abuse. It happens to 1 in 5 older Americans. 1 in 5, and in 80% of cases, it's family members doing the stealing. These aren't statistics from some study. This is real life, happening in homes across America right now, while we sit silent because we can't believe our own blood would do us that way. That evening, I performed my greatest scene yet. Standing at my bedroom safe, I punched in random numbers, shaking my head in frustration. "What's wrong, Mama?" Marcus appeared instantly, like he'd been waiting. "I can't, the numbers won't come to me." His eyes lit up like Christmas morning. "Don't worry, Mama. I'll handle all the important papers from now on. You don't need to stress yourself about these things." The combination to that safe, our wedding anniversary, James's birthday, and the year Keisha was born, had been the same for 20 years. But Marcus didn't need to know that. Not yet. He spent an hour that night trying different combinations while I slept. I watched it all on my phone from my bed, saw his frustration mount with each failed attempt. He finally gave up around midnight, but not before taking pictures of the safe from every angle, probably to research how to crack it later. But it was what I found in those important papers that changed everything. The manila folder was tucked behind Marcus's old basketball trophies in the hall closet, and if I hadn't been looking for my heating pad, I never would have found it. Inside that folder was a draft petition for competency hearing, my name typed across the top like a verdict already decided. Dorothy Mae Johnson, age 67, suffering from progressive dementia and deemed unable to manage personal affairs. Marcus had already signed it as the concerned son requesting intervention. The date for filing was set for May 15th, exactly 1 month away. My hands shook as I read through the false medical statements. Patient exhibits severe memory loss, confusion about familiar people, inability to manage daily activities. They'd even dragged Dr. Harrison's name into it, claiming he'd observed significant cognitive decline during my last checkup. Dr. Harrison, who delivered both my babies, who'd held my hand when James died, whose name they forged without a second thought. But it was Keisha's handwriting in the margins that stopped my heart. Her neat teacher's script spelling out the timeline of my destruction. Once declared incompetent, transfer all assets to joint account. Sell house by August. Monthly visits only at facility. The facility, I found that documentation too. Shady Pines on the south side. Not even trying to hide what it was with a name like that. The website photos couldn't disguise the truth I'd heard from church friends who'd visited family there. Residents left in soiled clothes for hours, medications forgotten, call buttons ignored. The Google reviews told stories of neglect that made my stomach turn. 1.7 stars out of 5. They'd chosen it for one reason. It was the cheapest in Jefferson County, $800 less per month than the decent places, $800 more they could pocket from selling my life's work. I photographed every page with my phone, then placed the folder back exactly as I'd found it, even repositioning the dust on the trophies. Then I went to my bedroom, locked the door, and called Harold Thompson, the lawyer who'd handled James's estate and every legal matter since. "Harold, it's Dorothy Johnson. I need to see you, but it has to be discreet." "Dorothy, is everything all right? You sound—" He paused. "You sound perfectly fine, actually." "That's the problem, Harold. Can you meet me at that little coffee shop on 3rd Avenue tomorrow? Not your office. And please don't mention this call to anyone." The next morning, I showed Harold everything. The security footage on my tablet, the photographed documents, the storage unit receipts. I watched his brown face cycle through surprise, anger, and finally professional determination. "Dorothy, this is conspiracy to commit fraud, elder abuse, identity theft. Your children are looking at serious charges here." "I don't want them in jail, Harold. I want them exposed. There's a difference." He adjusted his wire-rimmed glasses, a gesture I'd seen him make in courtrooms for 30 years. "Then we need to move fast and smart. First, let's update your will with very specific provisions." We spent 3 hours crafting language that would protect my assets while sending a clear message. The house would go to a scholarship fund for first-generation college students at Miles College. The jewelry to the Birmingham Museum of Art, except for pieces specifically mentioned, which would go to Brianna for her 21st birthday, but only if certain conditions were met. Now, Harold said, pulling out his phone, we need video testimony. I want everything documented with timestamps. I looked directly into his phone camera and spoke for 43 minutes. Every theft, every lie, every forged document. My voice stayed steady even when describing finding my mother's ring gone from my finger. Harold had to stop recording twice to compose himself. Dorothy, I've known you since James was alive. This might be the strongest woman thing I've ever seen you do. It's not about being strong, Harold. It's about being ready. The next step was transferring certain assets into an irrevocable trust. The accounts Marcus had been eyeing, the bonds James had purchased in the 80s, the life insurance policies, all moved beyond their reach. Harold's assistant, sworn to secrecy, had everything processed within 72 hours. Then came the medical evaluation. I called Dr. Harrison myself, explaining I needed a complete cognitive assessment, but couldn't say why yet. Dorothy, you're scaring me. What's going on? Doc, I need you to trust me, and I need everything documented, every test, every result. That Thursday, I underwent 6 hours of neurological testing, memory exercises, problem-solving assessments, brain scans, blood work to rule out any physical causes of confusion. Dr. Harrison ran everything twice to be thorough. Sharp as a tack, Dorothy, he announced, holding up the results. Cognitive function of someone 20 years younger. Whatever concern you had, put it to rest. Could you write that down, in detail, with your official letterhead? He gave me a long look but complied. The man had learned to trust my judgment over the years. That weekend, while Keisha was at her book club and Marcus was golfing, I gathered all the security footage onto flash drives, 3 copies of everything. One for Harold, one for the safe deposit box, one hidden in the freezer inside an old Cool Whip container. 23 hours of video showing my children stealing from me, discussing my future imprisonment, celebrating their anticipated windfall. The emotional weight of preparing to destroy the image of our perfect family nearly broke me. Saturday night, I sat on my bed holding their baby pictures. Keisha at 2, grinning with her first tooth missing. Marcus at 5, wearing his Superman cape to grocery stores for a solid year. Where did those babies go? I remembered teaching them about honesty at this very kitchen table, making them return candy they'd stolen from the corner store, the lectures about integrity, about how your word was your bond. Keisha had been 8 when she'd promised, I'll always take care of you, Mama, the way you take care of me. Marcus at his Eagle Scout ceremony, right hand raised, swearing to be trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly. James had been so proud that day, his boy becoming a man of principle. If he could see them now, planning to warehouse his widow for profit, it would kill him all over again. Sunday evening, I made the call that would set everything in motion. Keisha, Marcus, I need you both here next Saturday, 2 o'clock. We need to discuss my future care. Of course, Mama, Keisha responded, unable to hide the excitement in her voice. We'll be there. Bring Brianna, too. This affects the whole family. I hung up and looked at the small camera I'd positioned on the mantel, aimed at the living room where we'd gather. One more performance, the finale of this terrible show. I had everything ready, but nothing could have prepared me for my granddaughter's role in all of this. Saturday afternoon arrived with the kind of spring warmth that usually brought joy, but my hands were ice cold as I watched my family gather in my living room for what they believed would be the beginning of my end. Marcus arrived first, carrying a leather folder thick with nursing home brochures, his face wearing the expression of a man about to close a business deal. Keisha came next, and I could smell her expensive perfume, bought, no doubt, with money from selling my mother's silver. Brianna trailed behind, her 16-year-old face buried in her phone, shoulders hunched like she was trying to disappear into herself. I made my entrance from the kitchen, shuffling slowly, letting my eyes go unfocused. One last performance of the confused old woman they'd been so eager to see. I even wore the same house dress from 3 weeks ago, unwashed, playing the part of someone who couldn't manage basic hygiene. "Mama, come sit down," Marcus said, guiding me to my own armchair like I was a toddler. "We want to talk to you about something important." He spread those glossy brochures across my coffee table, the same table where James and I had played cards every Friday night for 20 years. "These are some nice places where you could live, Mama, where people can help take care of you." Keisha's eyes welled up with practiced tears. She reached for my hand, and it took everything in me not to snatch it away. "This is so hard for us, Mama. You know we love you, but we can't watch you struggle like this anymore." In the corner, Brianna's fingers moved across her phone screen. Recording, I realized. The child was recording this moment. I let them talk for another 5 minutes, let them paint their picture of how wonderful life would be at Shady Pines, how I'd make friends, have activities, be safe. Then I stood up, not shuffled, stood, straight-backed and clear-eyed. "I have something to show you all." The shift in my voice from confused to commanding made Marcus's folder slip from his hands. Papers scattered across my Persian rug, the one my grandmother had brought from her own mother's house. I pulled out my laptop from behind the chair cushion, where I'd hidden it earlier. My fingers didn't shake as I opened it, navigated to the files I'd organized so carefully. The clarity in my movements, the sudden sharpness in my eyes. I watched understanding dawn on their faces like a horrible sunrise. "Mama," Keisha's voice cracked. "What's going on?" "What's going on is this," I said, turning the screen toward them. The first video played in perfect high definition. Keisha leaning over my supposedly sleeping form at 2:47 a.m., sliding my mother's wedding ring off my finger. The audio was crystal clear. "You won't need this anymore, Mama." "That's my mother's wedding ring you're stealing," I said, my voice steady as bedrock. "The ring that survived the Depression, 2 wars, and 50 years of marriage. The ring you just sold to a pawn shop on Highway 31 for $1,200 when it's worth 10 times that in history alone." Marcus jumped up. "Mama, you're confused. You don't know what you're seeing. Sit down, son." Something in my voice made him obey instantly, the same tone I'd used when he was 7 and had been caught lying about breaking the neighbor's window. I clicked to the next video. There was Marcus at my safe, trying combination after combination, his face lit by his phone's flashlight. Then another. Marcus carrying my signed first edition books to his car at 2 in the morning. Another, him photographing my checkbook, my social security card, my bank statements. The compilation ran for 12 minutes. 12 minutes of systematic theft, of whispered conversations about my mental state, of planning my imprisonment. I'd edited it myself, learned how from YouTube tutorials, making sure every crime was documented with timestamps and dates. Keisha's face was a masterclass in emotional gymnastics, shock melting into anger, then shame, then defiance, cycling through again and again. "How could you?" she finally managed, trying for indignation. "How could you spy on us like this? How could I protect myself from my own children planning to rob me blind and lock me away? Is that really your question?" I pulled out the manila folder, their manila folder, and spread the forged documents across the table, covering those nursing home brochures with evidence of their conspiracy. Petition for competency hearing with forged medical statements, Dr. Harrison's signature traced from a prescription, plans to transfer all my assets once I'm declared incompetent. And this facility you chose, I held up the Shady Pines brochure. Has 17 citations for neglect in the past 2 years. But it was the cheapest option, wasn't it? More money left over for you. Marcus's stammering came out in bursts. We were just, we were trying to protect you. You were showing signs, the confusion, the memory loss. The confusion I performed? The memory loss I staged? I've been sharp as a surgical knife this entire time, documenting every lie, every theft, every betrayal. Protect me, or protect my assets for yourselves. That's when Brianna stood up, her young voice cutting through the thick air. Grandma, I tried to tell them. I tried to make them stop. Keisha whipped around. Brianna, be quiet. This is not— No, Mama, Brianna said, and I saw my own backbone in that child. I'm done being quiet. She held up her phone, showing a text thread with timestamps going back 2 months. I've been sending Grandma everything. Every conversation you had about her money. Every time you celebrated stealing something. The video of you and Uncle Marcus practicing how you'd cry at the competency hearing. The room went silent as death. Brianna had been my inside witness, my granddaughter choosing truth over blind loyalty. I'm sorry, Grandma, she continued, tears streaming down her young face. I should have done more. I should have— You did exactly right, baby, I told her, opening my arms. She rushed into them, sobbing against my shoulder while her mother and uncle sat frozen. A knock at the door broke the spell. I'd timed it perfectly. Come in, Harold, I called out. Harold Thompson entered in his Saturday suit, the one he wore for serious business. He'd been waiting in his car, watching for my text. His presence, tall and official with his briefcase and legal bearing, changed the entire energy of the room. Mrs. Dixon, he said formally, then nodded at my children. Keisha, Marcus. I stood straighter, my voice becoming the one I'd used for 38 years in banking. Harold has my new will. Everything goes to the scholarship fund at Miles College and the Birmingham Museum of Art. Everything except Brianna's college fund, which she'll receive when she turns 21, provided she maintains her integrity, something she's already proven she possesses. Mama, please. Keisha's tears were real now, ugly and desperate. We're your children. We made mistakes, but we're your children. Children don't steal from their parents while planning their imprisonment. Children don't forge medical documents. Children don't celebrate their mother's supposed dementia as a financial opportunity. Marcus's fear transformed into anger, his father's temper finally showing itself. You played us, you set us up. No, son, you played yourselves. I just gave you the rope. You're the ones who fashioned it into nooses. Harold stepped forward. You have 48 hours to return everything you've taken. Every piece of jewelry, every book, every item in that storage unit. The key, please. Keisha's hand shook as she pulled the storage unit key from her purse, the same purse where she'd kept the receipts for my stolen life. If anything is missing or damaged, Harold continued, Mrs. Dixon will file criminal charges. The evidence is overwhelming and already duplicated in multiple secure locations. They gathered themselves to leave, Keisha trying one more time. Mama, I'm your daughter. Doesn't that mean anything? It meant everything, I replied. That's why this hurts worse than your daddy's death. Marcus stormed out first, his shame burning into rage. Keisha followed, but turned at the door. I hope you're happy, dying alone with your money. I'd rather die alone with dignity than live surrounded by thieves. As they left my home that Sunday, I thought the hardest part was over, but the aftermath taught me lessons I never expected to learn. The silence that followed their exit was deeper than any quiet I'd known, even in the months after James died when grief made sound feel like an intrusion. For 2 weeks, my phone stayed silent. My doorbell didn't ring. The only sign of life from my children came in boxes delivered to my porch, everything they'd stolen, returned piece by piece. Some items still had the storage unit's packing tape wrapped around them, evidence they hadn't even bothered to unwrap their plunder before my revelation forced their hand. My mother's wedding ring arrived on day 3, tucked inside a plain manila envelope shoved through my mail slot. No note, no apology, just the cold metal band that had witnessed 72 years of history, returned like borrowed sugar. On Thursday of that second week, I was watering my tomato plants when I heard footsteps on my porch. Through the screen door, I saw Keisha standing there, her face aged by shame and sleeplessness. "Mama, can we talk?" Her voice came through the mesh screen, and I noticed she didn't try the doorknob, didn't assume entry like she used to. "Not yet," I said, and the weight of those 2 words felt heavier than all the lies she'd told combined. She nodded, turned to leave, then stopped. "I'm sorry." Barely made it past her lips before she broke down crying on my porch steps. I stood there watching through the screen, my hand on the doorknob, every maternal instinct warring with the memory of her planning my imprisonment. I didn't open that door. Marcus's response came through lawyers. Angry letters threatening to contest the will changes, demanding his rightful inheritance, claiming I was mentally unstable despite Dr. Harrison's evaluation. Harold handled each one with professional calm, his responses essentially variations of, "Your client has no legal grounds and substantial evidence against him should he wish to pursue this matter in court." The threats stopped after the 3rd letter, but Brianna, my grandbaby, took a different road entirely. Her apology arrived in my mailbox 4 days after the revelation, 3 pages handwritten on lined notebook paper, the kind she used for school. "Dear Grandma," it started, and then she poured out everything. The sleepless nights knowing what her mother and uncle were doing. Her attempts to stop them, arguments that ended with her being sent to her room, phone calls to her uncle that went ignored, the fear that telling would destroy the family versus the guilt of staying silent while they destroyed me. "I was scared I'd lose everyone," she wrote, "but I couldn't lose myself." I called her that evening. "Meet me at the coffee shop on 3rd Avenue tomorrow, 3 o'clock. She was waiting when I arrived, sitting in the corner booth, her eyes red-rimmed from crying. When she saw me, she stood so fast, her chair scraped against the floor. "Grandma, I should have done more. I should have—" "You did what you could, baby," I said, pulling her into the kind of hug I'd been denied giving for 3 months of pretending. "You chose right over easy, and that's all any of us can do." We spent 3 hours in that booth, rebuilding what her mother had tried to tear down. I ordered us both hot chocolate with whipped cream, her favorite since she was small, and we talked about everything. College plans, her fears about the family falling apart, her struggle with knowing when to speak and when to stay silent. "I'm going to teach you about money," I told her. "Real financial literacy. How to protect yourself. How to build wealth honestly. How to see manipulation coming before it arrives. Knowledge your mama never wanted to learn." Word spread through Birmingham's Black community the way news always does, through church networks and beauty shop conversations and neighborhood watch meetings. The responses divided clean down the middle. Some folks thought I'd been too harsh. "They're still your children, Dorothy. Family forgives." Others pulled me aside to share their own stories. Miss Rachel, whose son had stolen her Social Security checks for 6 months. Brother Williams, whose daughter cleaned out his savings to fund a boyfriend's business. Elder Thompson, who discovered his power of attorney, had been selling his property piece by piece. The stories multiplied until I couldn't ignore them. That's when I started protecting our elders at First Baptist, monthly meetings teaching seniors and their families the signs of financial exploitation, how to recognize manipulation, how to set up legal safeguards, where to report abuse. 30 people showed up to that first meeting. We're at 85 now. 6 months after the revelation, Keisha appeared at one of those meetings, sat in the back row, listened to me talk about recognizing when family love becomes family theft. Afterward, she waited until everyone else had left. "I've been in therapy," she said, her voice small in the empty fellowship hall, "dealing with grief and greed and what losing daddy broke in me. The therapist says I was trying to hold on to something stable by grabbing everything I could. Like if I could just secure enough money, enough things, I wouldn't feel so scared of losing more. It wasn't an excuse, but it was honesty, and honesty was something I could work with. It's gonna take time, Keisha." "I know, Mama, I know." The path toward limited forgiveness started there, slow as winter honey. Coffee once a month, supervised visits, conversations that stayed surface level until trust could be rebuilt from the foundation up. Marcus still hasn't called. His pride won't let him admit what he did, so he's chosen to blame me instead. Some families break and heal, others break and stay broken. I've made peace with both possibilities. Through all of this, I kept thinking about my friends who actually live with dementia. Sister Carol, who can't remember her grandchildren's names anymore, but whose eyes still light up at gospel. Music. Brother Peterson, whose wife visits him daily, though he thinks she's his nurse. The dignity they maintain despite their minds betraying them. The cruelty of Marcus and Keisha using that condition as cover for theft. It showed me exactly how far they'd fallen. Now let me talk directly to you watching this. If you're elderly, protect yourself. Install cameras. Document everything. Keep trusted allies outside the family who can verify your competence. Don't hand over financial control just because someone says you should. Your age doesn't diminish your worth or your right to manage your own life. And if you have aging parents, have the hard conversations now, before crisis. Talk about wishes, about plans, about who handles what if the time comes. Real love protects. It doesn't plot. This past Thanksgiving, our dinner table looked different. Smaller, but honest. Brianna helped me make the cornbread dressing using Big Mama's recipe. Keisha arrived with a store-bought pie. Humble pie, we joked, finding a way to laugh at the terrible irony. Marcus's chair sat empty, a reminder that some bridges burned beyond repair. Before we ate, I said grace with full mental clarity, every word chosen with intention. Lord, help us all remember that family means protecting each other, not from each other. Let us value people over possessions, truth over comfort, and character over convenience. Amen. My jewelry box stays locked now, but Brianna knows where I keep the key. Trust, but verify. Love, but stay alert. These aren't contradictions, they're survival. According to the National Council on Aging, 1 in 10 Americans over 60 experiences some form of elder abuse, and financial exploitation is the most common type. Family members commit 90% of it. These aren't just statistics. They're grandmothers losing their homes, grandfathers losing their dignity, elders losing their right to age with security. Test your family's love with your presence, not your pretense. The people who truly care about you will show up when there's nothing to gain but your company. If this story spoke to you, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from, and what would you have done in my situation? Your stories matter. Your voice matters. The peace that comes from knowing truth, even when that truth breaks your heart, is still better than living a lie surrounded by people who see you as a paycheck. My name is Dorothy Mae Johnson. I'm 67 years old and I have all my faculties, including the faculty to know when someone's trying to take advantage of me. I pretended to lose my mind to reveal the truth about my family's hearts. What I discovered cost me the illusion of perfect children, but it gave me back something more valuable: the knowledge of who truly loves me, and the power to protect myself from those who don't. Remember that. Your clarity is your power. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise.